welcome to another edition with Coffee with Cory. We are here with local author Stephen A. Guglich, and he is a fantastic writer. I've certainly been enjoying his book. We are here today in the local coffee shop here at New Hope. And you know, certainly you've been around these coffee shops a little bit.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I actually wrote part of the book right here at this location.
In this location.
Yeah,
right
and other Meg-A-Latte locations. The original one downtown I wrote.
Yeah. Well, the original. Hey,
yeah.
We don't get that too much. That's awesome. But thank you, Meg-A-Latte, and thank you, Meg, for certainly sponsoring this. I got my iced Dubai chocolate. It's almost gone. It's great. What do you got drinking today?
I broke my rule. So normally I don't do pumpkin until fall officially hits on September 22nd, but I really love Meg's pumpkin pie latte.
Okay, gotcha.
So good, good. So I couldn't resist.
Yeah, a lot of people love that, and pumpkin spice too. My wife likes the pumpkin spice, and well, let's get to your writing. You know, you have a great thing going here. What inspired you to be a writer, and what inspired you to write this book?
Well, over the years I've had lots of inspiration. So I got to start with my dad, who was he was a big inspiration as far as creativity and wonder. He always inspired that in us, and he was always creating something in some form. And he was always reading. He had shelves filled of fantasy and sci-fi books, and he would tell fantasy and sci-fi stories. And he'd have a calendar, he'd have the Frank Frazetta, the artist Frank Frazetta fantasy calendar in a shop that he would get every year, and with all the fantasy art in it. It was so cool. And so I grew up with that, and then we got into Dungeons and Dragons, and I showed my dad Dungeons and Dragons, and he fell in love with it too, and so that's kind of where the idea of creating characters and world building came in. You know, when in Dungeons and Dragons you get to role play these characters, create these adventures that you go through, and it was so much fun. And that's kind of where the foundation was laid. And then when I got into high school, actually, believe it or not, with as big a reader my dad was, and with all the books we had in the library, a book like this size was very intimidating to me.
Yeah, it would intimidate me back then.
I mean, so I honestly didn't start writing or reading until high school.
Yeah.
When my ninth grade or freshman high school English teacher said, we had to write a report. You could write a book report on any book you wanted, as long as the book was over 200 pages.
Ooh.
And I was like, no.
You're sweating bullets.
I was. I was like, there's no way. There's no way. And so I just was lamenting in the library at the high school, and I just saw this book that caught my eye. It was called The Spell for Chameleon by Piers Anthony.
Okay. And
it just had this really cool cover of this lion creature. I think it was called a manticore, with a scorpion tail and wings, and some guy dressed in a fantasy costume talking to this creature. So I just picked it up and fell in love with it, and then I started to become a voracious reader. And then that same teacher was also the journalism teacher for the high school, and she encouraged me to be on the high school newspaper.
Yeah.
So I started out as just an art editor, and then made my way up. By 10th grade, I was the editor-in-chief for the last 3 years of my high school career there. And she just encouraged me to write. And writing was intimidating there for a while.
Yeah.
Then I met my wife, and then that's where it really clicked. So when I was courting Karen, my wife, I would write her these little emails every morning. She would wake up to these little devotionals. It would be a little biblical passage and then some encouragement, and we call them woes, words of encouragement.
Nice, yeah.
And she would wake up every morning to them.
And you woed her.
I did. I did.
Here with us
I woed her and wowed her. And then on our wedding night, as a wedding gift, she took all those woes that I had ever written her, and she had them published into a book.
Wow, cool.
And she told me, you need to be a writer.
Yeah.
And that was the final inspiration that I needed to get on that path of writing. And and I haven't stopped since.
So since then, which was only, what, a couple of years ago, right?
20 years, yeah, well, 20 years when we met, 18 years we've been married, so yeah.
But she inspired you to keep going, and for me, it's been cool to see, and I've mentioned this to you before, I'm not a huge fiction reader, but your book has intrigued me, and I've got into your Piercing the Veil, your first book.
Yeah.
And it's so many different, you combine a lot of different aspects of so many different things, your imagination, historical facts, worldviews, and it's so cool how do you tie that all together?
Well, when I first came up with the idea for Piercing the Veil, or the veil itself, was, you know, I remember studying history and watching, you know, historical movies and whatnot. And if you look back at all these cultures, China, India, Japan, the Philippines, Egypt, Israel, they all have these stories that are fantastic stories of humans who can do incredible things, creatures that don't exist to this day, magic and stuff. I mean, you know, they even in history, like Charlemagne, for example, you know, famous king, he was said to have had a magic sword. You know, they considered his sword magical, and it's, you know, when you look back at all these things, I ask myself, where did all that magic go? If they believed in it back then, where is it now? And you know, of course, being a Christian, I know that, you know, that stuff doesn't exist in the fantastic sense that we, you know, but there might have been dragons at one time. We could have, you know, dinosaurs. There might have been, you know, who knows?
Not Spider-Man,
right,
or Batman.
right. Yeah, but you know, you had all these historical figures that were legends, and you know, and they were said to have done fantastic things. So that's why I came up with the idea of the veil. At one point in history, these fantastical creatures like elves and dwarves and gnomes and whatnot that might have existed, where did they go? Yeah. So they got fed up with, according to the story, they got fed up with humanity because humanity was starting to take over, and they were hell-bent on war and whatnot, and they just said, well, they're going to probably kill themselves out in a few years. We're just going to go hide ourselves behind a veil that they created around their cities, and they hid. And so then when you look at legends like the idea of gnomes, believe it or not, the idea of gnomes came from the father of toxicology. The guy who created the science of toxicology.
I didn't know that.
He also was a very much on studying subterranean things, and he claims that he had an encounter with this small creature. He called it a nim at the time, but throughout history it just became known as a gnome. But he claims that they existed and they were able to pass through walls. Now, my theory is that he was probably sniffing some of the stuff he was studying. You know,
a little bit of fumes there.
I mean, but still, I mean, this guy was a known scientist. So, so the idea there was that even though the veil exists, creatures from or races, you know, from behind the veil cross into, and that's where we get all these little stories of you know, encounters with gnomes or encounters with elves or that kind of stuff.
Yeah, that's cool. And so, you know, I got to reading your book and then also traveling here these last couple months, and I started about probably 6-7 weeks ago. Your audiobook of this is just great. He does a fantastic, and I was thinking maybe it was you, but you got a fantastic person that's reading this, don't you?
Yeah, Sean Allen Pratt, incredible. And I honestly didn't know how blessed I was when I first found him, because I was looking for somebody who had the voice of the main character, Jeremy, in the story, and it had to be somebody with not this gruff voice, like, you know, some of my favorite narrators, like Michael Kramer. He's got a great voice, does an awesome job, but his voice is deep and it's growly, and it just doesn't fit Jeremy. So I was on the hunt to find somebody, and I came across him, and he was reading a book that I was enjoying. I was like, oh, this guy sounds really great. So I contacted him, and he said, well, I don't really do fiction very much anymore. I really concentrate on nonfiction, but every now and then, if I find something I like, I'll check it out. And so he said, send me the manuscript, and he loved it. He loved the manuscript. Said, oh yeah, I definitely want to do this.
Well, you can tell too. He enjoys it as he's reading it, and it's fascinating. I love listening to it as well. So really, your books, and we talked about this. I mean, so it's geared towards what age group?
So I wrote it at the time I was a middle school principal, and and my kids were approaching middle school age. So I wanted to write something that parents and teenagers could enjoy together. And I think that's, in some ways, it's unique because I don't necessarily consider it a YA book. I consider it, an epic modern fantasy that is good for teenagers and adults who would enjoy it together. And the themes in the book are there so that, of course they tell the story, but they're also great ways for parents to connect and talk. Like there's talk of the after effects of suicide, the collateral damage of suicide. And suicide is not depicted in the book, but one of the characters is dealing with losing a family member to suicide.
Yeah.
Which is a prevalent topic that teenagers are talking about.
Absolutely, the stuff that they're going through, the anxiousness, and certainly some Christian undertones in the book.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah. So there's one of the characters in the book is a Christian. And one of the characters, the other characters are agnostic and atheists. So there's kind of there's that worldview. And I didn't become a Christian until I was 28. So I sort of had that perspective of what life was like. So the main character is an agnostic, doesn't believe in God in the sense. And his worldview is if God exists, God probably doesn't really care. And then you have other characters who are diehard Christians who have given their lives to Christ, and so there's those different worldviews in there which is another great topic for parents to talk about with their family.
Yeah, absolutely. So there's really no hesitation with kids reading your book, or from middle school age on.
Yeah, I would recommend, mainly because of some of the topics like the suicide and some of the violence. I would say it's middle school and up.
Yeah.
And I've had parents who said that their 10-year-olds have enjoyed it. Yeah. Not that I would recommend it to a 10-year-old, but I mean they as long as parents are aware of these factors that are in the book, that I think it's definitely clean. There's no cursing, there's no sex scenes in it or anything like that. The hardest thing in there is the violence. Yeah. I would say it's PG-13 violence, like a Marvel movie or a Lord of the Rings movie.
Yeah, no, I think that's good to point out for the viewers and people that are interested, certainly. And we're here also today to unveil the second book.
Yes.
And that is so cool. And so your title of the second book, what is it?
So it's called Shattering the Veil.
Shattering the Veil.
And it takes place right after Piercing the Veil, and the cover was designed by Autumn Burt using the art from James Skinner.
Okay.
Who's a local artist as well.
Local teacher here in town, or was?
Yeah, he's an art professor at the high school, at the college now. Yep. Yeah. So he designed some of the artwork. Erwin Arosa, who did the artwork for book 1, also there's some of his artwork on there. And Autumn Burt is an amazing cover designer. Doesn't use any AI, which is very important to me. That it's
authentic.
It's authentic, yeah. The cover is just I think it's gorgeous.
Yeah. Well, we're excited to see that, and it's right here, right on Coffee with Cory, Meg-A-Latte, and Shattering the Veil is here today
for the first time.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Well, thanks, Steve. We appreciate you coming and making this a place that we can do that, and we look forward to the listeners and seeing the feedback of your second book.
Awesome. Thank you. Thanks for having me. This has been great.
Sounds good. With that, have a good rest of your day.